Today on Server Talk, we're going to install TF2 Server with bots. Alright, so today we're going to install and set up a TF2 server with bots. Now you can do this pretty much on any Windows version you want. I'm doing mine at VM. You can see I'm running Windows Server 2012 R2 here. But you can definitely do this in any Windows version. There's also a Linux guide that I'm considering making. I just haven't made it yet. And all the tools that we're going to need are directly available on the internet. I will also leave the scripts and commands that I use personally, just the setups and stuff. Just it makes it easier if you can copy it into a notepad document, stuff like that. I'll leave that all in the description, as well as links to everywhere that you need to go to download this stuff. So the first thing we're going to need is we're going to need to go ahead and open up Chrome or your choice of a web browser, and we're basically going to grab two things. And it's really one thing, but we need to grab a piece of information too. So the thing we're going to download is Steam CMD. And don't worry if you don't have a Steam account, it doesn't really matter. You can just sign in anonymous. The other thing we're going to need is the TF2 server app ID. And what you're going to look for that is Steam database, it has it. And there's your app ID. So we'll need that number in just a second, we don't need it right now. Now when you're on the Valve developer page, you can really click right here, and Windows, and they have a zip client right there. Simply download that, and then you will get a Steam CMD zip. I'd recommend extracting this definitely to the root of your C drive. I put it in a folder called srcds, and that just keeps everything in the same place, and because this will create a bunch of files when you run it. So the first time you run Steam CMD, you're going to get, it's going to basically act like a Steam update. It's going to go through and check everything, and you see a bunch of files have now appeared in here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to log in to Steam, and we're going to log in anonymous. If I can remember how to spell anonymous, A-N-O-N-Y-M-O-U-S. And it will log in anonymously to Steam Public, so you have, it's really, really simple. So now, basically what I'm going to tell it to do is we're going to go grab the dedicated server. Now, you can definitely sign in with your Steam account to do this, but I recommend you use the anonymous account just because you'll have a lot easier time. But there are a few commands we have to do before we can actually go and download this. So the first thing we need to do is we need to tell it where we want to install. Here, just for simplicity, I'm going to tell it to install to C TF2, which is just going to be a file called TF2, a folder called TF2 on the root of your C drive. And to do that, you're going to write the command force install _dir, and then you're going to type the file path. That's going to be CTF2. Now, a quick note with file paths. For some odd reason, Steam CMD does not support file paths with spaces in their names. So if you make a file with a space in its name, you're going to get the first name of that file and nothing else. So recommendation for stuff like CSGO and stuff, type cs-go, and that's what you should use for your Steam folder names. So now that we have told it where we want to install, we're simply going to tell it app update 232250, and then it's going to go and download the physical server. There are a lot of guides online that point to a forum user where he's basically built an application that will do this for you, but it's definitely easier in my opinion because you learn how to use Steam CMD, because you will have to do this to update it periodically. It will tell you, you know, your server's been removed from the master server list because it's out of date. And this is really simple. You just tell it the same place and tell it to app update. It won't re-download the entire server. It will just update the necessary components. So I'm going to come back when this is all done. Alright, so now that it's fully installed, the Team Fortress 2 dedicated server, we can actually exit out of SCMD, and we can come over into our Windows File Explorer, and ignore that disk. And then when we come to the just the root of the C drive, we're going to see TF2. Okay, that's great. Oh, look, there's an application. What happens if I click on it? Nothing. Nothing happens. Well, actually, something does happen. You just can't see it. So I'd recommend not doing that. Sometimes it actually will launch a background application, and it will make your life of setting this thing up absolute hell. So what you should do is you need to right-click and hit New and hit Text Document. We're going to call this TF Start. Now, it's going to act like a text document for now. However, we need to add some code. So the things we're going to write is srcds, which stands for something dedicated server. I think it's Steam something dedicated server. But then we're going to tell it the game. Well, the game here is Team Fortress, so it's going to be TF. And then we tell it, and because we're not using console, we want to use the user console, the graphical one. So we're going to write usercon. Then we're going to tell it game type. And because this is just a default TF2 server, it's going to be type 0. Of course, if you want to run a man versus machine or other type of server, you can definitely do that. You just change the game type, and those codes are also available on the internet. Just Google TF2 game types. And then the last thing we're going to put is game mode, also 0. Those correspond. Of course, you Google one, you'll find the other. Then we're going to save this, so you have the text file. Then we're also going to come over here and hit Save As. We're going to save tfstart.bat. And now we have a batch file. These are really common in Windows, especially in dedicated servers on Windows. You'll need these to launch physical applications. So we're going to launch this. You see it pulls up a window. And look, Start Dedicated Server. Game Team Fortress 2, Team Fortress 2 Dedicated Server. Now, I'm going to use the map 2 for it, because that's a really popular map in TF2. So we're going to play on the internet, not on the LAN. Make note of this UDP port. On Windows, especially, this is going to be an issue. You need, before you even consider starting the server, you need to come up here, and this is on Windows 8. On Windows 7, you can also search for firewall, and you'll see Windows Firewall with Advanced Security. Open this, and once it comes up, you want to go to Inbound Rules and hit New Rule. Now we have to give the program permission to communicate outside of our network. And we'll go through router setup in just a second, but the first thing we have to set up is the firewall on the local host. So we're going to tell it we want to host a port, and the specific port that we want to host is 27015. And it's on TCP. You're going to have to make one for both. You have to make 2 different rules, and I'll show you what I do just to keep those track. So we're going to call it TF2 TCP. Now we're also going to hit New Rule, and we're also going to go back to port. The only thing different, we're going to put the same number, 27015. We're just going to change this to UDP. Then hit Next, Next, Next. The name is going to be TF2 UDP. And now you have both ports that you'll need to be able to have this server communicate outside the network. But you're not done yet. Now we have to configure our local network to allow this server application to communicate outside. Now this is different for every router, and I can't make a guide for everyone. But for my router, and I have a Linksys, you can go in and you want to access your router. Now, some routers, the password may be different. I've changed mine personally and forgotten it right now. But once you get into your router's configuration panel, you want to look for something called port forwarding. And that's, for me, that's in security. So I'm going to come over to security and hit apps and gaming and hit single port forwarding. Now you see I've got a bunch of ports forwarded already, and that's because I run game servers. But we need to add a few. But before we can add those ports that we need, we have to determine the IP address of the machine that the ports have to be open for. So what you need to do is open CMD. You can do this both from the start menu or from doing the run prompt. Either way works, it doesn't really matter. So what we're going to type into here is ipconfig. Now this isn't the same thing as going to Google and typing what's my IP. This is actually your internal IP address, which is different from your external IP address. Your external IP address is what you give your friends when they want to play, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But we see here that we have an IP address of 1.104. So now we know that when we add a port, and we have to name it on my router, you may not have to, but we're going to call this TF2 or TF2-VM. Because I'm in a virtual machine. Name your ports. Really do name your ports. They will help you out a lot if you do that, and you will know what you're looking for. So we know our port that we're looking for is 27015, and both boxes here, because we're going to need external port and internal port, they are the same for most servers. They may be different, so always look to see what you're working with, and make sure both is enabled. We have enabled both TCP and UDP. That's just a general thing. Now it's asking for the IP address and the device IP specifically, and we've checked ours, and ours is 1.104. And so once that's set up, you can hit save and hit apply. And apparently I already have a port open on 27015. Now I don't. So once you've saved that port opening, you can exit out of your web browser as you're done. So the next thing that we need to do is actually start up the server. Now, Archon, I'm going to set to Archon. Please do not set your Archon password to Archon. You will literally really screw up if you do that, because people can remotely administer your server. Don't set your password to Archon. That's a bad idea. Don't do it. I'm doing it as an example, but don't do it. And then you click Start Server. Now, this may take a second to load, or it may crash on your computer, and that's just the way Team Fortress works, unfortunately. There are fixes for this, but it's very system dependent, so if you're having issues, definitely Google and find out, hey, I'm on Windows 7 64, and this isn't working. And you'll probably find a result, but it's really just it's a guess. So now we're logged into the usercon, and this is different from a terminal. So you see you have some tabs up here, and now we're going to go ahead and configure this server for bots, and so that you can have, if you want to play alone maybe, but you want to play against other AI, you can actually play anywhere or on not any device, but you can have a server that has bots on it, and I'll show you how you set that up. So you can enable a map cycle in here. I'm not going to do that because for every map you have to generate nav grids, and I don't feel like generating 60 nav grids. But we're using 2 for it. That's a really popular map, so that should be enough for us. In here, configure. I personally don't mess with this except for the win limit, and I put that to 6, and then the round limit to 10, and that just makes sure it advances the map. Now, coming over to console, we're going to go ahead and mess with bots. So the first thing we're going to do, because we have to give the bot somewhere to walk, is we're going to type sv_cheats 1. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, hey, why is he enabling cheats? We shouldn't have to do that. Well, unfortunately, to edit configuration files through the console, you have to enable cheats, because you can actually mess with some really cool stuff. But we're just messing with nav stuff, so it's not really cheating. You just have to enable the cheats command so you have full access. The next thing we're going to type is nav_generate. And it's going to go ahead and sample every area of the map that a bot could potentially act in. So snipers, stuff like that. You see it's finding the hiding spots, it's finding the encounter spots, and it's finding the sniper spots, and it's going to go ahead and compute the mesh visibility, which is basically what the bot sees versus what you see. This may take a little while on your computer. It doesn't really take very long on mine because I have a pretty decent setup here. But you see it's already saved the navigation map, and it actually will go ahead and reload the server. So now we see it's saved, generation complete, 23.9 seconds elapsed. So now that nav mesh is complete, we're going to go ahead and disable cheats, and that's going to be sv_cheats 0. And that will disable cheats. You're now back to a vanilla server, and you can earn achievements. And the next thing we're going to do is tf_bot_add. And I'm going to type 16, and that gives 8 bots to each team. Just fairness. You can go with odd numbers, and it will auto balance the teams every once in a while. But now we see there are no players, but it's kicked all these people. So where did all these come from? Well, these are the bots, and basically what they're going to do is they're going to not exist until someone logs into the server. They're there, you just can't see them on the players because they're bots. They really don't break rules, so you can't really ban them. So that's how that works. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into some TF2 gameplay that'll show you how the bots work. Alright, so in TF2 this is going to be a little bit different than what you're used to. You don't click on play multiplayer and you don't click on play co-op. You're going to hit on servers. And you see, I have a few added here just from my favorites, but you're going to come down and hit add a server. Now, if you set up your server, to get your IP address, it's really simple. This is the IP address that if you go to Google and you type, what is my IP, that's the IP address you're going to get. It's going to be a public IP, that's the IP that outside your network is broadcasting. So that public IP is what you want to give your friends. So you're going to give them that IP. In my case, mine is that one. And then you're going to want to hit find games at this address. So you see, here we have a Team Fortress 2 dedicated server. And this is the one that we were working on earlier. You see I have another one, but this is the one we were working on. So we're going to hit add the selected game to our favorites, and then we're going to close out. So you see now we can connect to it. So if we hit connect, you'll see we're VAC secured. It's pretty much like you're playing on one of those where you'd hit the button and it finds a server for you. Now, depending on your internet connection, this may take a little bit longer to load than one of those big servers, but again, that's because your internet connection is not Valve's internet connection, so just be patient if it takes a little while to load. Now, as you can see, we're at 2 for it. We're going to hit to continue, then I'm personally a red guy, so we're going to hit red, and I'm going to play as Sniper. Now you see, all these bots are here, and they've all disappeared as well, but they're still here. That's because I joined mid-game. Alright, so the only difference between the server is that it's hosted on your computer or in your living room or in your basement. It's just not hosted on one of Valve's servers. So you really get to understand the difference between, versus Valve hosting versus you hosting. And you get to learn a lot about how this stuff works. It's really easy to maintain, and you can totally do this as a viable solution for you and your friends if you're running a smaller or medium-sized gaming clan. So guys, I've been Rinsler. This has been Server Talk. I hope you've learned a lot, and I hope you can figure this out. And that's going to be it. Happy playing.